episode of the Roundhouse Roundtable. We are very excited today to have with us one of our own, Mike Stier, who is our head music architect. And today's episode is about algorithms versus architects. And I'm sure you can get an idea of what that might mean, but we're going to go into that a little later. So, Mike, welcome.
Thank you very much for having me.
And tell us a little bit about what you do.
All right, well, I started out collecting music all my life. From the time I was pretty much born, my parents played a lot of music. My dad especially played a ton of classical music, especially on Sunday mornings when he would go out and get the paper, set up a fire in the fireplace, and then I'd be sleeping upstairs and I'd hear classical music playing. I'd come downstairs, and so that was my first real introduction to with music, I suppose. That was probably when I was around 5 years old, 6 years old.
So you've kind of got like a foundation in music, and not only just music, but classical music. So you have an appreciation for that.
Absolutely. And then I found out through just his record collection, he collected acid jazz, early jazz, all the classical hits and every major composer. A ton of jazz, smooth jazz, and then there was soundtracks and R&B. Soul, and he had Motown up the wazoo. It was fantastic. He had a lot of great stuff.
So music is pretty much a part of your DNA.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
You were destined to do something in music. So tell us about being a music architect. Like, what does it take? What is that?
I guess you got to have a good ear for what's out there.
What does it require? What do you do?
What I do, I basically listen to music all day. No, I carefully collect a lot of music that I've been collecting for decades. I have a huge database, and I've been just collecting every genre that I can. I just have a good ear for it. I think I have a trained ear to know what sounds good and what also applies to a space that I'm working with.
Right. So most people don't even know that this is kind of like a thing, you know? So
right.
What led to you coming to a point where you are actually technically a music architect? You're not a producer, right? You're not a music engineer.
I have no training in any of that, actually.
Have you ever done any DJing?
I did a lot of DJing in a wine bar.
Okay, so tell us about that. Maybe that's part of this path we're getting to.
Yeah, that was my entry into the whole with music, essentially. DJing in a wine bar. So I was given carte blanche to play pretty much any genre of music as long as it kept people drinking and eating and having a good time.
Okay.
And so playing from early evening until like 3, 4 in the morning, I'm not playing the same song twice.
Okay.
So how I have that kind of memory even to know what.
Got it. So now we're getting somewhere. So, so you're DJing in some dedicated space. You're the, house DJ. You've got to watch the crowd, get a sense of, is it time for dance music? Is it time to slow it down? Like that is what DJs do.
Reading the room, sure, absolutely.
Reading the room, okay, so that's definitely leading me to exactly what you do now as a music architect. It sounds to me, you're head music architect here at Roundhouse Multimedia. You started with this affinity, this appreciation for classical music, all right? I'm seeing this path, and then that led to you actually being in control, like the person in control of keeping people on the dance floor or, keeping the vibe in the room, reading the room, right?
Right, absolutely. But that's also where, I'm sorry, cut you off.
I was going to say, how did what you do now come next?
Well, it's really cool because Derek had a studio down the street, and he would come in with his then girlfriend, and they would come in and enjoy the music, and he was a wine drinker, so he loved to hang out in there, and that was very cool. So he and I just got to talking about just music in general. He just liked what I played, and then and then he had sprung this idea to put background music for resorts in the Caribbean, and I'd never heard of it. I'd just kept on collecting music. I didn't know that my DJing would parlay into doing what I'm doing now.
Right.
I mean, that was the early stages, and so when I met Derek, that was just incredible. It was just such an interesting idea and a concept for a company. But he wasn't starting out right away, and I had to wait a couple of years, but I kept in contact with him. and then
That's where you are.
then the rest is history, really.
So the show is about algorithms versus architects, right? You're the architect, and I want you to talk a little bit more about that. From an algorithm perspective, for those that may not know, basically when we say that, we're referring to music that's programmed, or content, I should just say, content that's programmed into some kind of system. There are movie programs that we all watch a TV that has an algorithm. You last watched this, and so you might like this. Similar to the music algorithms that exist in music services, where you play a certain number of songs, and it basically automatically feeds you songs. But obviously, that's missing something. That's missing, I'd say it just falls short of providing the human touch.
The emotion.
The emotion. That's exactly what I want you to touch on. So
Absolutely.
So now I want you to explain to us. This is algorithms versus architects. So we want to see
Man versus machine,
there
essentially.
you go. We want to understand why you are the better choice. What makes you more valuable?
Just the emotion, getting so deeply into it, on feeling your five senses, essentially, really getting into it. I get so into the zone of doing what I do that it's just, it almost is scary, because it's just, your undivided attention is paid attention to all the music that I collect, and then what I curate and put just into genres, to these just massive folders of music.
Now that's from your perspective.
Right.
So now talk to me from the end user's perspective, the guest or shopper, or the person that's actually, not the business, not the hotel, the resort. I'm talking about the person that is actually listening to song after song. What's the difference? How do they even know? How do they respect the value that you bring to the table?
Between the emotion and the feeling, I can listen to a song within 30 seconds and know if I can use it or not for anything that we do. How? I don't know. Just
But what about the end user? Like, can you think they can tell?
Yeah, I think so.
So someone at the hotel, again, they've been there.
They'll know if it's cheesy. They'll know if it's
Or they've been there a couple of days. All right. So they've been there a couple of days, and they're getting a feel for the playlist that they're listening to.
Right.
Sell me on why do we need Mike Stier and not that algorithm?
I don't think the algorithm really knows. Just again, going back to the emotion of it. I mean, just this feeling that you love a song, whereas I just the human touch is just knowing that it's a great song, and that it'll really connect with who I'm making the playlist for.
Yeah.
Putting myself in their shoes, essentially.
Right.
And just imagining me being at the property, literally.
Exactly. And I know, here at Roundhouse, you work with the rest of the team to feed off of the creative brief that they give you, which assesses the environment, and here's a human reading something, having a clear understanding of what it looks like there. So there's got to be some huge benefits to that in comparison to an algorithm that there's no human analysis. You're interacting with the rest of the team. You got to see what they wrote down.
Right.
You got to see the things that they saw and noted as important, from the audience to the space, to the ceiling height, to the decor.
Well, what also plays into that is being able to write, essentially. I mean, I only dabbled in doing some writing. I did some dance music critiquing for a number of years, but that definitely sharpened my skills into being able to look at the creative brief and then speak to, say, Faxi or so. And
the rest of your teammates.
Right. And to further essentially unpack what kind of music to be conveyed to at the resorts.
Now, as a person here at Roundhouse that's obviously, I'm part of the team, but very much separated from the actual construction, the curation, the creation. My typical view of you is the back of your head, headphones on, and in this zone like you've never seen before. And I don't like to bother you when you're in that zone.
I know, I have to tell people to slack me or text me. I even text my wife, though. She has to text me because...
Where are you then? Where is Mike Stier during that process?
I'm fully immersed in a space that is just like a Buddhist state, literally.
Now, does that mean, based on the creative brief that you got, you're there? You're in that? You know, if the team has done a good job of describing
Right.
that space, are you in that space? Are you a
Absolutely.
customer? Are you
Oh,
a
yeah.
listener in that space, and you know what needs to be played for that space?
Yeah, absolutely. Just based on what's described for that specific environment. So I'm just like really studying each word and listening to playlist examples and just really per time of day just getting really immersed into it and understanding what the tempo is and the type of music. It's
Yeah,
really
see,
cool.
I'm personally, I mean, honestly speaking, I'm fascinated by that because your job here is so demanding that the vast majority of the times, if I'm not mistaken, you don't enter that space, but you create the perfect music for a space that you never entered, and that's pretty impressive, I have to say.
Yeah, looking at a website or mostly a website, pictures if possible, right?
And of
But
course
actually, not really. I try not to look at some of the websites depending on what I'm doing because I also like to be creative and just based on the creative brief, just imagine the space.
So, talk to me about the most challenging, playlist that you've had to put together.
Sure.
I'm sure they're all quite challenging, but
Yeah.
give us an example of one that was just tough.
Anything involving any other language that I don't speak, I don't speak. So probably one of the toughest ones were the Chinese, Japanese, Thai, things where I have to essentially translate some of the song titles or the artist name of the song.
Really?
And they're just, I did that in the beginning, and it was so difficult. It took me days to do it.
Right.
It was fun. It was interesting, but it made me understand how complex, even what I was doing, just the time it takes to really...
So was it the language barrier or
Definitely the language
just
barrier.
a different type of music?
everything.
Yeah?
Mostly the language barrier.
Interesting. So I often hear you talk about genres of music, you know, and you're preparing a playlist and you got to make sure it has some type of reggaeton and it's, from 90s R&B and all these different, but then every now and then I hear you mention a music genre that personally I've never even heard of. Just be interested to hear. Run off just the list of music genres or subgenres that you encounter and you have to develop sometimes for playlists.
Spacey, like spacey themed. And then I've now made that even bigger. I've taken that, what we did for a playlist for I forgot the zone at a resort, but they wanted spacey themed, almost movie soundtrack stuff. And other, not just movie soundtracks, but other spacey themed music.
Spacey, okay.
So not trance, not hardcore trance, which has a very high BPM.
Okay, there's spacey, now we got trance, and what else you got?
Along that, what else? I don't know. I'm developing like a deep house kind of trance too.
And for our viewers that may not know what that is, what exactly is deep
What
house
is that?
trance?
120 BPM maybe. Slow, it's dancey, it's sexy, it's dark and groovy, or can be dark. Vocal, non-vocal. Has a nice groove to it, good after-hours beat.
Okay, and BPM meaning?
Beats per minute.
Okay, so you have to, again, I'm trying to process all this and gaining a new respect for what you do. So you've got to figure out the genre. You've got to make sure it aligns with all the things that have been drafted in the creative brief.
Right.
And you have to make sure, if two songs are perfect, but one of them has the more appropriate BPM, you have to...
based on between morning, afternoon, evening, those are the three main times of day that I curate music towards, so make it for a playlist. So that comes into play, but once you get into the zone of doing what the direction calls for it to do for the morning, for the afternoon, for the evening, I just go into the switch is flicked, and I just go into it, all right,
so here's another
the
thing
understanding of what I need to do.
Right. Here's another thing I want you to do. So obviously we work with these very large, luxury, all-inclusive resorts. And the way it works is that there's different zones out there, and we provide music to each of the different zones.
Sure.
So give us an example of one, a song. You don't have to talk about the actual brand of hotel, But picture a hotel that, I don't know, has 15, 20 zones. What might be playing? If I walk the entire property, what might be playing that I hear that you curated in all those different places?
Chill out, lounge.
Or where?
Where? Oh, where? I'm sorry.
So
And
tell me.
when you walk in, say to the lobby, maybe
Okay.
there'll be an interesting blend of chill out vocals, spanning, say, the last
BPM?
5 to 10 years. Slow, I guess.
Does it matter in the lobby? I don't know.
It does.
Okay.
Yeah, depending on the mood they want to set.
All right.
If it's a jumpy, depending on the demographic
Sure,
of the
sure.
hotel, and
Then where?
say, I don't know, like a VIP lounge could have like classy jazz, cocktail kind of jazz, vocals. Some maybe non-vocals involved as well. Say you go into, any number of the food lounges, or say the buffet, that could have, say, an international feel. So you would want, like,
makes sense.
say, cover songs, so that when somebody hears a song, maybe the cover song doesn't appeal to them, but then the person at the resort thinks that they'll probably wind up buying the real song or downloading the real song. So that's an interesting avenue too to talk about. Say the pool bars, just more upbeat, more pop and dance stuff that's current.
I would assume the
And modern.
The adult pool might be a little different than the
Different
family
from the
pool?
kids' pool, yeah. Different
Okay.
music.
And what?
Age.
Tell me those differences.
Everything nothing has any profanity, so I'm always mindful about that because I've had little things happen and rear up their ugly heads.
Right.
But yeah, I just learned how to get away from that. But yeah, kids is very specific type of music, can be pop and poppy, along the lines of Britney Spears or something old school.
Sure.
Then you just have a lot of the restaurants and the different types of cuisines that matches the music, which is very cool. Italian, French, Chinese,
Right.
Japanese.
Right. So again, working on a large resort sounds like.
And I have it all.
I
collect it all.
And because you
Crazy.
have to accommodate so many different zones.
Right.
It's not just one genre of music that you have to
Right.
know.
Could be several in one playlist.
Absolutely. So let me ask you, give us an example of like your favorite job. Again, don't go into the actual resort
Right.
brand or name, but like what was it about? Like, what did that particular assignment call for that you just loved? It could be anything. It could be just
see.
been because it was so challenging, and it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
It's like
Well, probably the all Asian themed, the Thai themed resort.
tell us more about
That was possibly one of the. Yeah, that was my first one. The first serious non-English property that I really had. I worked on pretty much every zone. It was just intense. The amount of research I had to do to prep myself to get the certain type of music that I needed was just.
That's what I'm interested in. So,
Intense.
it was was it Mandarin?
It was Thai, so there was
Thai,
some Mandarin
okay.
in there, Asian sounding, Asian
So there's the
influences.
language.
Right.
And then it's making sure, because just like any American music, there's many different types of genres. There's different history.
Right.
My understanding on that job, it had to be super duper traditional.
Right. The old school stuff, essentially.
So basically that was one where you couldn't just off the top of your head, come up with. You just know who to refer to nail that particular music. But you had to go to basically do some.
I did a lot of research. No, I did a lot of research and just, again, things I collect such obscure stuff. In all my decades of doing this, I just collect so much stuff. I just appreciate I just feel this need and urge to collect everything, even if I don't like it. I'll collect it.
That's
So
an appreciation.
that I knew it would wind up helping me because things that I didn't normally collect, I collected, and then it came time where I had to actually use it. So.
It's to me, I got to tell you, it's pretty fascinating because I don't think I know anyone that knows more about, that can just pivot from hip hop to top 40 to, it seems like you just got all kinds of categories of chill and trance and space and things like that. It's terribly impressive. And, we're lucky to have that. Just to talk a little bit more about Mike and Mike's, what has influenced you in terms of music, whether it was a specific artist whether it was a group or an album, or just a moment. Could have been you were with someone and experienced something, or someone you met. Could have been as a child or last week. Just give us something that really stayed with you, and you just always remembered. And again, it was sort of connected through music.
I don't know why. This off the top of my head was rap and hip hop. I got into it very early. I used to break dance when I was younger.
Wait a minute.
So that was a huge connection.
You used to break dance.
I have video to it. No, I have pictures actually to prove.
So tell us about that.
So I got into a lot of early old school.
Who?
Jesus. Let's see. Black Moon, Tribe Called Quest, Public Enemy.
Okay.
NWA. Absolutely NWA.
So what you're saying is, in terms of a moment in time that really
I connected.
You connected
started
to
really
that and
connecting, yeah.
influenced you and stayed with you. It sounds like it was the early hip hop movement.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, the latter 70s and then into the 80s and 90s. 90s hip hop, definitely. Yeah.
That's interesting. All
Yeah.
right. That's, now I have to say, this is a question that we always try to ask our guests here on the Roundhouse Roundtable, and because I'm such a music enthusiast, every time I address this question and I ask the guest, there's typically a moment in my lifetime that is similar that I can connect to, because I've got just so many music moments and so many more to go for future episodes. But for me as well, I was sort of riding my bikes. I was at the age of riding my bike in the street during the time of in the birth of hip hop. Literally before songs started to go on wax. In other words, they were making official records. So there was this underground cassette tape market, and who has the latest cassette tape of Grandmaster Flash from the
Furious Five,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, and
the Furious Five.
from the Rucker League or from the Rooftop Club. These are like the early hip hop places where you'd only be able to hear them on a mic with a DJ mixing, and I was right there on the scene when Rapper's Delight, like literally the weekend that they started recording it, because they did so in New Jersey, technically in Inglewood, an area they called Sugar Hill, and I was actually friends with the daughter of Sylvia Robinson, who was the head of Sugar Hill, and it was just interesting to be that close to it. But as I've said in previous episodes, when you're in the moment, you don't really know that you're not part of history. I wasn't part of it, but you're watching like firsthand history being made. I mean, literally, we were watching it. Just like you see anything else, any other trend start up. But who would have guessed?
That's cool.
It would be where it is.
I never knew that.
Yeah, absolutely. Who would have known? And there's a lot of rappers that never got to a point of being recorded on wax. There's one that actually Jay-Z goes back and gives homage to, and tries to basically give them due credit, which is a group called the Cold Crush 4.
Yeah, I know that name.
And
sure.
And again, they were one of the best, and they just never had that opportunity to really, just become a huge success. They ended up putting some old stuff on wax, but so anyway, clearly you touched a nerve with me.
We gotta wait. I gotta wait for you to interview me for me to find out this information.
Huge hip hop. In some of my corporate jobs, when I'd be coming home in a suit and tie, but if you roll down the window, you hear like Biggie Smalls and something like that. So that was always the anomaly.
What else would be coming out of that car?
A whole lot. Trust me. So, what's the most recent concert that you've seen?
Depeche Mode, last year,
Depeche?
Barclays Center.
Now,
My wife loves them.
although
I got into them early.
Well, what year were they popular?
80s. Yeah, the Violator album probably, 84.
Depeche Mode. I saw that. You recently saw that?
They were fantastic. Yeah, they were good.
Really? Okay.
Nine Inch Nails I saw last year as well. I'm into early industrial stuff too.
Got it. All right.
Very, very eclectic.
So here we are, 2019, fall, just starting to get chilly. I don't know about you, but for my sort of, playlist, either around the house or when I get in the car, it tends to be aligned with like, what's the summer playlist going to be,
Right.
as you get ready for summer. So now we're
Right.
getting into fall, just a couple weeks into fall now. What's on your playlist? What's on, and especially coming from a guy like you, the head music architect here at Roundhouse, what's Mike Stier's playlist? Like right now, when you walk to the train station, what do you click on?
Actually, I don't listen to any music outside of the office.
I guess that makes sense.
Not on my phone, not when I go away.
So that's when the headphones come off.
Nope.
Now, and then is it because you listen to so much music here? It's a time to sort of clear your head?
In a way, I do it when I go home. I'll set aside time. I do actually do it when I'm at home, and I'm also immersed in my environment. No, I have no interest in hearing music, probably because my wife also listens to the radio, and as we know how the radio, they just play so many songs, the same songs. I just don't like hearing it.
Got it. So here's another, just to get back to the music sort of being played in different spaces. Are you at a point where, especially being the music architect, and you customize these playlists for specific areas of specific environments, do you walk into these places and, and say, and judge?
I know, it's hard not to, in a way.
So is that, literally?
Yeah, there's times I just let it go, but it depends. I've been places where, and you probably can identify with this too, no matter any space you go into, if they have the wrong music playing and you're trying to talk or you're trying to have, a quiet dinner or a lunch or whichever, if the music is wrong, it's going to screw up your afternoon or evening potentially unless you say something.
Right.
Or you just don't want to say anything, but I think it pays to vocalize, just to say, listen, this is the wrong music.
Well, and so I would assume then you really work hard to make sure that you do not curate the wrong music.
It's hard because it's so subjective.
But you nail it. Okay, so
Right.
clearly you know what you're doing. But what's the wrong? We know Mike Stier does the right music. Okay, but what's the wrong music?
The wrong music. Reggaeton, you said, that you mentioned before, because it has too much profanity, too much. It's usually about sex and violence and.
Okay, so a genre that's wrong.
There's a time, like everything. There's a time and place for everything. So.
Okay. But there
rap and hip hop is another genre that can't really use depending on the space.
Okay.
So.
What
I collect it though, but I don't use it.
What if the space, the environment calls for a demographic profile that listens to hip hop?
Then I can make a playlist along those lines without using profanity though. All the clean versions.
Okay.
So
when you're sitting in a restaurant or walking through a store, and again, Mike Stier says the music is wrong. What other? Is it the BPM? Is it the volume?
No, it's usually just the song, just the wrong song.
The actual
Absolutely
song,
the song.
the genre.
Maybe the volume too. Certainly the volume plays into it.
All right.
Here, a prime example was I was vacationing with family, and we were away out of country, but we were in a French restaurant, and they had playing. We were going down for breakfast, and they had house music playing. And it was just not the right clientele, It was an older demographic, at least 45 and up.
Doesn't sound like that.
It was not. And actually, I asked them to turn it down. They had it getting going.
Well, this has been amazing to, even for me, to get a sense of exactly what it takes to be a music architect. Personally, I'd say that music architecture wins over algorithms because it has that. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, man.
It's been a pleasure.
Had a good time.
And as we always say at the close of the Roundhouse Roundtable, please make sure that you like us, share us, and make sure you watch us on your favorite podcast. Thank you very much for tuning in.